All right, well, welcome to Seahawks Chat. Normally, I usually do videos in the evening, sometimes even late at night. But it's one of the very rare occasions where I have actual free time to make a video during the day and being able to release it during the day or the evening instead of releasing it at like 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning. So it's kind of hard to get traction. But in this event, this video specifically is a special video because I want to talk about being able to do actual analysis of JSN and honestly predicting on how he will be working with with Seattle and how Seattle's going to use him in their offensive scheme because of one player that they've already had who probably is basically the same player in terms of talent, but JSN, I truly believe, is much more loaded in potential to be transcending elite superstar. But, so, we're going to get down to it. I'm going to talk about the player, and that is Doug Baldwin. Do y'all remember him? Doug Baldwin, Angry Doug. Everybody loved Doug. Now, here's the thing about Doug Baldwin. He went undrafted in 2011, as many Seahawks fans know. People may not know this, but in Stanford, before he went undrafted, he was actually the leading receiver, which was kind of something to note because nobody really gave him a chance. And I don't think at that time they had Andrew Luck, but it doesn't matter. So he went undrafted in 2011. He ended up hooking up with Travaris Jackson, with the offense in 2011. They weren't exactly the best, but we tried. And we also had Matt Hasselbeck, I believe. But I know Travaris Jackson was throwing the Baldwin. And I know his first year he had about 700 yards, but that's not the metric that I would go off of, even though that is a very productive rookie season. For me, in terms of rookie wide receivers, if you make more than 500 to 600 yards and average about 20, 30 catches, I think that's a great rookie season because you're coming into the league. I don't expect you to be a 1,500-yard receiver in your first year. If you are, then that's special. That's just special talent, or your system fits you perfectly so you can be that talented with the scheme. Because there's always two types of players. There's the extremely special player, and there's a player that benefits off a scheme to the point where they look like a superstar, even though it's really the scheme. But in any event, so we're going to talk about 2012. Doug Baldwin was considered their number 3 receiver, the slot receiver primarily. He had 29 receptions, 366 yards, and 3 touchdowns. His long was 50 yards, and he averaged 12.6 yards a game. Now, understand, he only started in 40 games, and he played in 14 games. But he had very limited playing time, and those 4 games that he started were actually more of the apparently, it was more the tail end of 2012 when he was actually getting more starting time, which makes sense because Doug Baldwin was always good. I was just surprised that he didn't start more games as I was doing research. So, anyways, 2013, he starts in 9 games, does play in all 16. He did play in all 16 games, but he only starts in 9 games. This was the year of the Super Bowl. Excuse me. He had 50 receptions, 778 yards, 15.6 average yards per catch, 5 touchdowns, and his long is 52. Now, these don't sound too impressive already. I mean, the first 2 years that I just mentioned, especially 2013, he basically just almost matched his rookie season in terms of yardage. But if you watch Doug Baldwin, you can see in 2013, notably, you can tell he was the number 2 to number 1 receiver because Sidney Rice and Jermaine Kearse, all of them all together were all basically number 1s if you really had to pick and choose. But it was Sidney Rice was probably the most favoritive because he was definitely the most outside wide receiver. And Jermaine Kearse he was really good at catching on the outside. And I think Doug Baldwin was a much better slot receiver than Jermaine Kearse. So that makes sense why Jermaine Kearse was mainly on the outside a lot of his snaps. Now, as we get to 2014, 2014, when we go back to the Super Bowl and unfortunately have the most dreaded ending of a season I've ever had in my life to this day, Doug Baldwin was the number one receiver. Behind him was Percy Harvin and Jermaine Kearse and all the rest of them. I also apologize. In 2013, we also had Golden Tate. So Golden Tate was probably their primary. Then you had Sidney Rice and Jermaine. But even then, that's what I'm trying to mention is that Doug Baldwin would choose to be third. He would choose to be the slot receiver. He would always be a Z receiver because it fits his play scheme the best. He knows he's a great slot receiver, so he's going to keep playing to his strengths. Okay? So 2014, he plays all 16 games, starts all 16 games. 66 receptions, 825 yards, 12.5 average, 3 touchdowns, 49 long. All right? That's when we go back to Super Bowl and lose. Are showing some improvements. Again, he's on now at this point, he would be in the league about 3-4 years. If this is also, I think, when we did the extension. Now, here's where things ramp up. And I'm going to make a big emphasis on this year because I feel as though if JSN can progress with Seattle on their scheme and keep running these kind of schemes that fitted Doug Baldwin, this is the type of results I can see JSN hitting within 2 years or less. Maybe his second sophomore year in, not his junior year in, his third year, his second year. He might even hit these numbers. So in 2015, Doug Baldwin was considered their number one receiver. He chose to be in the slot. In fact, this is the only time I found such a big percentage of Doug Baldwin in the slot. He was in the slot the entire season, all 16 games, 81% of the snap. 81% of his entire offensive snaps in 2015 were off the slot. He was the Z receiver. He had 78 receptions, 1,069 yards, 13.7 average per catch. His long was 80 yards, and this is the big one because he led the league in touchdowns. 14 touchdowns, okay? Now, here's something to really emphasize. This year alone, in the slot, he accumulated 1,007 yards in the slot, all right? 81% of his targets and his lineups. No, 80% of his lineup is in the slot. 85% of his total catches were in the slot. That's insane. And he produced all this production in the slot. Like, that should ring some alarm bells. We have JSN in the slot. And understand, we have better X and Y Zs in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf in terms of both talents and actual player. They're better players than we had in 2015, which at the time I do still think was Sidney Rice and Jermaine Kearse. No one's going to deny and disagree with me saying that they would much rather have Sidney Rice and Jermaine Kearse than Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, because you are nuts. Even I can't be that much of a homer to say, oh, no, I love those guys. No. There is more improvement now in our wide receiver group than ever before. So this is something to note. Now, 2016, he still played primarily in the slot. Unfortunately, it was so vague in terms of percentages, but as I kept watching all his highlights, he's in the slot, even 2016, 2017. He's always in the slot, even though he's a number one and number two receiver. He's primarily in the slot. In 2016, he actually went to the Pro Bowl, and 2015 as well. They both went to Pro Bowl. But in 2016, he had 94 receptions. He had 1,128 yards, 12 yards average, 7 touchdowns, and his long was 59. So, still rather productive. Sure, the touchdowns were cut in half, but it still shows a lot of production, especially since even in 2015 onwards, 2016 onwards, and 2017, even 2018, all those years, his last year, 2018, primarily in the slot, working off of the slot, being the Z receiver. And he still produces almost 100 receptions and way over 1,000 yards. Like, These are numbers that you need to consider that JSN could produce because Carroll can run these schemes. And I think if he can work with Shane Waldron and talk to him about the schemes that he ran with Doug Baldwin, I think JSN, Waldron, and Carroll will just gobble it all up and can make JSN into a superstar off of the slot. Like, that's impressive. So in 2017, Dougman starts to degress. You know, he's getting older. He has 75 receptions, 991 yards. Still impressive, mainly off of the slot. 13.2 average, 8 touchdowns, impressive. And his long was 54. You must understand, these are all from the slot. All these numbers that he produced after 2014, he was the dominant slot receiver. Dominant slot receiver. He was by far the best slot receiver in the 2010s. Like, you can't even argue that. Its numbers back it up. I pulled up numbers from Pro Football Focus, and these are the numbers that Doug Baldwin accumulated off of the slot alone. Just running routes primarily as a Z slot receiver. He accumulated 5,127 yards. That's 5th all-time in Pro Football Focus, counting. 34 touchdowns. I believe that's 4th. 254 first downs. Sorry, 254 first downs. Also, I believe in the top 5. And 2,785 career snaps off of the slot. That's impressive. And again, I think that's a top 10. I believe that's top 10 in Pro Football Focus. But all these numbers are impressive. And this is a guy who's working off the slot and just dominated off the slot throughout the years. His entire grade, like his slot grade percentage, is 90.6%. This guy was that good. He's throughout his whole entire career, he averaged an A in the slot. And it only shows, if you see his tapes all throughout and him playing slot receiver, it jumps out that Baldwin is not only their best receiver, but him lining up on the inside the majority of his career benefited him immensely because it made everyone else not only worry about the inside, but it made people like Tyler Lockett get completely wide open 10 yards because they're focused on the inside. This is something that's completely beneficial and something to note for JSN's projection towards the NFL, being able to be the premier slot receiver that we are already expecting him to become as a rookie. Now, with JSN, everyone's biggest comparison was Jarvis Landry. Everyone said he's going to be Jarvis Landry-esque and blah, blah, blah. And it makes sense because Jarvis Landry is definitely one of the best slot receivers in the NFL today and has been. But people always seem to forget that Doug Baldwin was also one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. And he wasn't that way, not just because of his skills, but he also ran perfect schemes that was derived from Carroll's offense. So, where am I coming with this? This is something, what I'm saying is JSN could have the potential to explode very early if he just basically runs similar schemes that Doug Baldwin did, especially notably between 2013 all the way to 2017. If he ran those same schemes and routes and basically played the inside the way Doug Baldwin did, which I have plenty of confidence that he can. He has plenty of potential, plenty of talent to be not only the best inside receiver in the NFL, but be a force. Like, actually have multiple defenders have to double team him on an who double team slot receivers? You see what I mean? This is something that can be very impressive for JSN. If he's able to harness the same routes and be able to run the same schemes that Baldwin did primarily throughout the years before, this is going to be insane. I think JSN is going to have a massive future. And it's only going to be a matter of time before he will reach his potential, just like Baldwin did. Working on the inside, doing what he knows is best, doing his best talent, being the best Z receiver in the NFL. All right. Now, um, in terms of comparing apples to oranges, because that's really how I see it, JSN is a better player. JSN has more talent. He's much more he's much more agile, definitely more better agility, and more or less the guy feels. I feel like he runs on one speed, but that speed is still just fast. Like he's really technical, just like Baldwin was. But the problem with the difference between him and Baldwin is Baldwin always had that burst, the first step burst, and was able to do shifty. He was so shifty that he was able to create space within the first 5 yards because of the way he was able to basically juke out and cross over the cornerbacks. And even the cornerbacks that he would take on, because he would work in the slot, they're always nickelbacks. And a lot of them aren't even much better than the outside corners in terms of talent. That's what I'm trying to also say is JSN could cook a lot of these cornerbacks. He's already cooking starting caliber cornerbacks. Now, imagine him taking on lesser skilled talents, nickel corners. It's going to be destructive. But yeah, so I just wanted to make this quick video about just comparing Doug Baldwin and what JSN could have the potential to do if Carroll, Waldron, and JSN just basically run the same similar schemes that Baldwin was given, throughout the decade prior. And if people want to agree with me, I appreciate that. If people don't agree with me and think I'm completely wrong and think that this is such a dumb, bogus take, I understand that. I do. I'm really good at taking criticism, and I'm really good at listening to the other side of the story. So I just want to address that now. But this is just my opinion. I really do believe that if JSN transcends, this is going to be one of his best ways to do it. And more importantly, I just want to make notice now, and I want to emphasize now that within the next 2 to 5 years, JSN is going to be not only one of the best slot receivers, I wouldn't say ever, but in the NFL for sure. He's going to be a top 15 receiver all around. And that's saying a lot. Maybe top 10, but for sure top 3 slot receiver, especially if he does these same schemes, same routes, same everything that Doug Baldwin ran within the last few years. All right. So again, I hope you guys like what you hear. I appreciate you guys listening. I'm doing this again off of my laptop. I'm gonna try to make another video soon enough in the evening. But I hope you guys appreciate and like what you guys hear. If you guys like this video, please check out my other videos. I'll start putting some tabs up. I've been learning how to work with YouTube in terms of like advertising my videos a little bit better. Like on these videos. And yeah, so I hope you guys watch out for my next video. I'm gonna have another topic in terms of talking about Mike Jackson. I actually did not speak about him in the recap because I kind of wanted to make a separate video about him. So hope you guys watch out for that later in the evening. I'm gonna go ahead and give you my opinion on him and seeing what we can do in terms of keeping him, trading him, or will he get benched because of his one bad performance? All right. So again, thank you very much. Please again like and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoy this, and you already know, go Hawks.